Okay, so these 10 statements or declarations. Now, we use a little bit more of the technical expression, 10 statements or declarations, because in fact, the Jewish law has 613 laws called mitzvot, and these 10 are not among these specifically. Rather, it's often said that these 10 are umbrella ethics or umbrella ideals of the 613. So perhaps categories of that are often used as for the various 613, but more broader, we can say broader ideals or ethics, for overarching ideals or ethics for the Jewish people, large principles to live by, rather than the part of these 613 commands or laws according to the organization of the laws by the interpreters of it generations after Moses. Okay, so some that we've already seen. No other gods. We'll look at that in a later slide. No other gods beside this God. It doesn't say there's only one God. It says take no other gods besides this God. I'm the God of the Hebrew people. Make no sculpted images or likenesses of him. Don't take the name of the Lord in vain. Rather, so religious people are reluctant to use the name of God in a kind of curse sort of language, like saying, "Oh my God," or "Oh Jesus Christ," sort of use it in anger or frustration, which is different than praying and saying, "Oh God," and actually pursuing a prayer. But but always using in a very reverent, holy way. And in fact, for the Jewish people, the name of God is so holy. It should not be said aloud so much that the chief name for God, Y, which is the letters YHWH, was not spoken aloud so much that it's not really known how it would have been spoken aloud, and as there's not really vowels written in Hebrew script between it. It's through practice of speaking aloud that you know how to pronounce it, that it's not known how to pronounce. And so some say Yahweh or Yahweh, others more English and German-based pronunciation. Some would say Jehovah, but how is this pronounced? It's not known. Okay, so work and Sabbath is the fourth. Maybe the fourth is actually two commands or two statements or declarations of ideals, to be more precise. Right? It says to work for 6 days, and even as God took the seventh day off from creation, human beings should devote that seventh day to worship and praise God and spending time with family, not working, not lighting a fire even. And the Sabbath for the Jewish people is from Friday evening through Saturday afternoon, whereas for most, and all Christians, it is the Sabbath becomes Sunday in congruence with what is believed to be the day in which Jesus was resurrected from the dead. On that third day after Good Friday. Okay, so Sabbath, really conservative Jews will even refrain from driving their cars on the Sabbath because you have to light a fire, right? The ignition system has to go on for a car to go, and so this would be not even being able to take a trip somewhere. Although less conservative Jews don't have this sort of rules, which is very helpful for them to get to synagogue. You have to walk the many blocks or miles if you want to join in worship with your fellow Jews on the Sabbath at a synagogue or house of worship for Jewish people. So also with it, you're not even supposed to turn on lights during the Sabbath and use your finger or light a candle, right, during that time itself. But rather, candles will be lit before it begins, and nonetheless, clever Jewish people will sometimes put their lights on timers. So electric timers you can put in as part of your outlets in the wall, right? And the lights will turn on and turn off according to the times you want to be awake or sleep in certain rooms. Honor your father and mother. Do not murder. Do not commit adultery. This is usually having sexual intercourse with someone who is not your husband or wife. And not stealing. No libel, slander, defamation. And not speaking untruths about people to undermine them, right? And speaking lies about people to undermine them. Not coveting other people's stuff, and it names different things. So that your neighbor's house or spouse or donkey, things like that. Do not covet it. Do not desire. It seems that desire is a big source of evil for the Jewish ethic. As we've already seen, it is very much for a Buddhist ethic that desire leads to suffering. So the word used in Hebrew for this list of 10 is Asherat HaDibrat, which literally means the 10 statements or the 10 declarations. Asherat HaDibrat. Okay, so these 10 statements or declarations are distinguished from the 613 Jewish laws or mitzvot. If you wanted to add them to that, then there'd be 623, but traditionally Jewish interpreters have counted or organized there to be 613 Jewish laws, which do overlap in a way, but those 10 are more larger, broader principles to live by than these 613 laws or mitzvot. So the mitzvot, these are about 60% of them, the majority of them, are things not to do, and 40% of them are things to do. Jewish interpreters usually see that many of them, especially ones that have to do with the sacrifices of the Jewish temple, are no longer relevant, as there is not a Jewish temple to sacrifice at in Jerusalem as of today, and there's others that are just not appropriate or just have nothing to do with modern day situations and circumstances. And so maybe of the 613, 2/3 of them, a little less than 2/3, still have relevancy to some degree. But as many that can we follow, a very religious Jewish person will try to follow them. So mitzvot is not only translated as command or laws, but it also can be to do. A mitzvot is also seen as to do a good deed within the Jewish ideals, but it can also be a covenantal type of relationship, more broadly speaking. So a bar mitzvah or bat mitzvah for girls, these are rites of passages in which Jewish 13-year-olds will go through to show they are committed to an adult Jewish lifestyle, to the faith, and want to participate in the community. That they're entering into this serious covenantal relationship with their community and with God, and they go through rites of passages where they'll read from the Torah before the congregation, and they'll often give some sort of midrash, or in other words, an interpretation of what that's about. So something like a short sermon, what they understand from that. And this will be a rite of passage, in other words, welcome them from having moved from childhood into an adult member of the community. Okay. So we're not going to learn all 613 of these mitzvot, thank goodness, within this introductory course on Judaism, but here's some examples that I found interesting when I glancing through this long list. And number 7 says, to love God. Now, I thought that was interesting because um, those who come from a Christian background often perhaps have this feeling that the laws are some sort of long list of drudgery, things you're forced to do, and this big weight and big burden. Yet some of them are just, it's very sweet. Develop your relationship with God, love God. This might include praying to God, but nurturing that relationship with God in everything that you do. Imitate His good ways, right? Created in the image and likeness of God according to Judaism. Imitate His good ways of compassion, mercy, generosity, kindness, love, and truthfulness, right? And you can develop that image. To honor the old and the wise, right? To give some respect. Don't discount those who are older and wise as no longer being relevant. It's usually a good thing. Others say let's have the old and the wise earn respect, sure, but don't have a bias against them either. Okay, it's to circumcise male offspring. Here we already talked about the law of circumcision from the time of Abraham. Now Abraham was an elder adult when he was circumcised. For Jewish young, they're usually 8 days old when the circumcision ritual is performed. And this is a sign of the covenant. They're part of the relationship with God, relationship with the Jewish people, making these people as His people with a special purpose to worship Him or it or her alone. To relieve a neighbor of his burden, right? Help your neighbor has some groceries to bring in. Maybe you're literally lifting the burden, or is moving out and moving in to bring some boxes in, right? Or just help out the neighbor in some way, make that burden less burdensome. To leave the gleanings of harvest for the poor. So this is one of my favorite ideas expressed in the Jewish Bible, the Tanakh, right? In which it's said that when one harvests their grains or what have you, that which falls in the ground should be left for the poor to come after you, to be able to pick up and have for themselves. Those that can't really afford to grow a lot of food or have a lot of food for themselves or don't have the land to do it. These are gleanings. This is food especially for the poor themselves. Okay, to lend to a Gentile but not to an Israelite with interest. Okay, and these laws are given as both 58 and 171. And so what does this mean? This means that one can lend out to a fellow Jewish person money, but you cannot charge interest to that Israelite. But if it's not a fellow Jewish person, so Gentile, the word Gentile just means non-Jew. If you lend out to a non-Jew, you can treat it as a business transaction, which is not to a family member, it's not to your fellow religious ethnic group. You can charge whatever the going rate of interest is to that person for that money loan. Right? So what happened in the Middle Ages, for example, certain jobs were barred from Jewish people, but they were allowed to give money interest to, say, let's think about Europe and a Jewish person living as a minority in a German or Dutch or Spanish city, that they were allowed to do money loans to a non-Jewish person, so they especially had the opportunity to go into banking and be able to be a member of a loan-giving bank. Meanwhile, the Christians around them that they're living among, seeing themselves as the new Israel, right, the new chosen people, those who had recognized Jesus, whereas the Jews had not recognized Jesus. In their estimation, they were now the true Israelites that they took as the Jewish Bible as their Old Testament, and this has teachings and ethics that were valid for them. So they saw themselves as the ones that can give a loan free of interest to fellow Christians, but only non-Christians can they actually ask for a money loan for. Now this was eventually, once you enter the 1500s and 1600s, more and more neglected and not implemented as much, but Middle Ages for sure was taken very seriously and supervised by religious authorities, making sure that wasn't happening. So Jewish people became very rich as bankers, as money lenders, whereas fewer Christians could viably be part of this business. Now that take envy for many of your non-Christian members of your society becoming the more wealthy ones, combined with being one who maybe took a loan and not wanting to pay it back, and third, anti-Semitic propensities as reputation as Christ killers, whether or not that's a valid interpretation of the New Testament, that Jewish people had their hand in killing Jesus. Surely wasn't the people that you're living among now. It was people that many generations before, even if it was Jewish people. These combined into some vehement anti-Semitism, and so much that there were pogroms and or anti-Jewish mob attacks in which from time to time Jewish people would be killed, and from a few to dozens to hundreds at a single time at various periods and various places in Europe during those Middle Ages. Of course, it did not go away in the time of the Protestant Reformation, the Renaissance period, into the pre-modern period, 1700s, 1800s, and of course into 20th century Europe, and horrible events of the Holocaust. Sex with one spouse alone only, right? It overlaps closely with that one of the 10 statements and declarations. Eat fish, but not shellfish. Shellfish are weird, don't eat them. Just a regular fish. Right? Shellfish are also seen as sort of bottom feeders or feed on nasty stuff, so don't stay away from them. Don't eat meat with milk, right? Coming from this idea that you should not kill the young and its parent at the same time, or perhaps not kill an animal who's pregnant, generalizing that don't eat milk with meat itself. Don't eat non-kosher animals such as pigs. Right? So with this, bacon wrapped shrimp would be completely off limits for a religious Jewish person. Weigh with accurate measures accurately, so business dealings, don't try to pull a fast one, get advantage. Weigh the different items to how much they are, rather than how much you'd like them to be to charge more. Not to practice kesem. Kesem is usually translated as magic. Now, it's interesting to think, you look at the stories of the different prophets in the Jewish Bible, and often them are performing miraculous things that defy nature as we normally understand it to be working. But this is seen as done by the power of God, whereas Kesem is this sort of evil magic is practiced by power of other gods or demons or evil forces or malevolent purposes. So I can't make a statement whether the likes of Harry Potter, if he was a real character, he would be breaking this mitzvah in particular. Eat of the paschal or pashol you want to do the German pronunciation. Passover lamb that's sacrificed, and not to destroy fruit trees. Okay, so the lamb that's sacrificed in remembrance of the time of the 10th plague and the escape of Jews from Egypt. All right, eat of that, and this one to respect fruit trees, especially. So there's a saying that even if you're in war and you want to try to undermine the enemy, don't even destroy their fruit trees, destroying their fruit supply. Fruit-bearing trees are a wonderful thing. Respect them. Don't touch them. Por favor. So the Jewish law, we might think of these times 3,000, 3,500 years ago, would have you as being a time before law and legal codes, and the Mosaic law prescribed in the Jewish Bible was unique and original. And sure, it was to the extent that it has particular laws framed in particular ways that may be distinct from other civilizations and groups in the surrounding areas. They won't have that particular law, but there's others, such as this code that's attributed to a king that lived at this time, King Hammurabi, and there's different stone artifacts that have been found and discerned and translated by those who study these ancient languages to be able to, and have been compared with things like the Mosaic law to understand how unique or in common and similar to other laws were, and sometimes just studied as for its own sake, such as the Code of Hammurabi for its own sake. So you see similarities in the two laws. You see the idea of an eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. So this usually wasn't implemented, at least for Jews, in a literal way. That if one person smacks the other person and takes out their eye, they can't see anymore, that they would literally, as a punishment, stab that other person in the eye, or the other person in the eye, and take out their eye. Or rather, it was something in which they would pay a monetary value in recompense for the loss of abilities and the loss of being able to work, perhaps just effectively see and enjoy the world effectively through that loss of an eye. Respect for parents, both of them enjoying, not bearing false testimony, telling the truth about matters, not stealing. Both of them prescribe the party of the woman to bring a dowry or a money gift to a marriage. They both censor adultery. Did I spell that correctly? I'm not sure. Hopefully I spelled that correctly. So sex with someone who's not your spouse. Bodily mutilation for punishment is prescribed by both, such as cutting the hand of the thief. But there's also differences. The Mosaic law has more of an upfront and candid theistic orientation, even though the Code of Hammurabi seems to be dedicated to one of the gods of ancient times. It seems to be the god of Shamash, the sun god. The Jewish Bible law is very much dedicated and repeats and has a lot to do with respecting and honoring their God in a serious way. The love thy neighbor is part of the Jewish ideal, but not the Code of Hammurabi. Put away wife. Okay, so it's made explicit that Jewish men have the right to divorce their wives if they have good reason to, while in the Code of Hammurabi there seems to be statements in which give women the right to put away their husband, divorce their husband if they have some sort of grievance to do so. Okay, so big ideal here. You don't have to know all these details, but the idea that there are other laws that exist at this time, and the Mosaic law is one of them, although it does have unique features that are distinct from others, such as this love ideal or having a very theistic God orientation that's through and throughout this law. Okay.